Namaskar everyone, welcome to the second episode, or I can say the second chapter, which is Making of the Constitution. ये जो मैं वीडियोस बना रही हूँ उनका पर्पस एक तो ये है कि मुझे अपने रीडिंग के आवर्स कैलकुलेट करने हैं, एंड सेकेंडली आई फेल्ट इट विल बी यूज़फुल फॉर द स्टूडेंट्स जिनको लक्ष्मीकांत अभी ख़रीदना नहीं है या फिर ख़रीदने का वो सोच रहे हैं और सोच रहे हैं कि ख़रीदें या ना ख़रीदें. दे कैन एक्चुअली लिसन टू दीज ऑडियोज़ एंड गेट एन आइडिया. और जो तीसरी बात है वो ये है कि हर जगह हम बुक्स कैरी नहीं कर सकते, एंड लक्ष्मीकांत इज़ अ वेरी बल्की बुक, और हर जगह हम रीड भी नहीं कर सकते PDF को. तो इसको सुन सकते हैं और सुनने से आई थिंक काफ़ी चीज़ें थोड़ी ज़्यादा क्लियर होती हैं. सो दिस इज़ द पर्पस, एंड नाउ विदाउट वेस्टिंग एनी टाइम लेट्स स्टार्ट. द फर्स्ट टॉपिक इज़ डिमांड फॉर अ कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली. It was in 1934 that the idea of a constituent assembly for India was put forward for the first time by M.N. Roy, a pioneer of communist movement in India. In 1935, the Indian National Congress (INC) for the first time officially demanded a constituent assembly to frame the Constitution of India. In 1938, Jawaharlal Nehru, on behalf of the INC, declared that the Constitution of Free India must be framed without outside interference by a constituent assembly elected on the basis of adult franchise. The demand was finally accepted in principle by the British government in what is known as the August Offer of 1940. In 1942, Sir Stafford Cripps, a member of the cabinet, came to India with a draft proposal of the British government on the framing of an independent constitution to be adopted after the World War II. The Cripps proposals were rejected by the Muslim League, which wanted India to be divided into two autonomous states with two separate constituent assemblies. Finally, a cabinet mission was sent to India. While it rejected the idea of two constituent assemblies, it put forth a scheme for the constituent assembly which more or less satisfied the Muslim League. Now, the composition of the constituent assembly. The constituent assembly was constituted in November 1946 under the scheme formulated by the Cabinet Mission Plan. The features of the scheme were: the total strength of the Constituent Assembly was to be 389. Of these, 296 seats were to be allotted to British India and 93 seats to the princely states. Out of 296 seats allotted to British India, 292 members were to be drawn from the 11 governors provinces and 4 from the 4 chief commissioners provinces, 1 from each. अब ये 11 गवर्नर प्रोविंसेस क्या हैं और 4 चीफ कमिश्नर्स प्रोविंसेस क्या हैं, ये एक बार हम रेफरेंस में देख लेते हैं सो दैट अभी हमें क्लैरिटी मिल जाए. सो गवर्नर प्रोविंसेस जो हैं, दीज इंक्लूड मद्रास, बॉम्बे, यूपी, बिहार, सेंट्रल प्रोविंसेस, उड़ीसा, पंजाब, नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न फ्रंटियर प्रोविंसेस दैट इज़ NWFP, सिंध, बंगाल एंड असम. और जो 4 चीफ कमिश्नर्स प्रोविंसेस हैं उनमें आते हैं दिल्ली, अजमेर, मेरवाड़ा, कुर्ग एंड ब्रिटिश बलूचिस्तान. So these 4 were the 4 chief commissioners provinces. Now, each province and princely state or group of states, in case of small states, were to be all allotted seats in proportion to their respective population. Roughly one seat was to be allotted for every million population. Seats allocated to each British province were to be divided among three principal communities. Those are Muslims, Sikhs, and general, all except Muslims and Sikhs, in proportion to their population. So the three principal communities were Muslims, Sikh, and general, which included all except Muslims and Sikhs. The representatives of each community were to be elected by members of that community in the provincial legislative assembly, and voting was to be by the method of proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. The representatives of princely states were to be nominated by the heads of the princely states. It is thus clear that Constituent Assembly was to be a partly elected and partly nominated body. Moreover, the members were to be indirectly elected by the members of the provincial assemblies, who themselves were elected on a limited franchise. और लिमिटेड फ्रेंचाइजी का मतलब क्या हुआ यहाँ पे? That the Governor of India Act of 1935 granted limited franchisee on the basis of tax, property and education. The elections of the Constituent Assembly for the 296 seats allotted to the British Indian provinces were held in July to August 1946. The Indian National Congress won 208 seats, the Muslim League 73 seats, and the small groups and independents got the remaining 15 seats. However, the 93 seats allotted to the princely states were not filled, as they decided to stay away from the Constituent Assembly. Although the Constituent Assembly was not directly elected by the people of India on the basis of adult franchise, the assembly comprised representatives of all sections of Indian society: Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Parsis, Anglo-Indians, Indian Christians, SCs, STs, including women of all these sections. The assembly included all important personalities of India at that time, with the exception of Mahatma Gandhi. Working of the Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly held its first meeting on December 9, 1946. The Muslim League boycotted the meeting and insisted on a separate state of Pakistan. The meeting was thus attended by only 211 members. Dr. Sachidanand Sinha, the oldest member, was elected as the temporary president of the assembly, following the French practice. Later, Dr. Rajendra Prasad was elected as the president of the assembly. Similarly, both H.C. Mukherjee and V.T. Krishnamacharya were elected as the vice presidents of the assembly. In other words, the assembly had two vice presidents. Objectives Resolution. On December 13, 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru moved the Historic Objectives Resolution in the Assembly. It laid down the fundamentals and philosophy of the constitutional structure. It read as: This Constituent Assembly declares its firm and solemn resolve to proclaim India as an independent sovereign republic and to draw up for her future governance as constitution, wherein the territories that now comprise British India, the territories that now form the Indian states, and such other parts of India are as are outside India, and states as well as other territories as are willing to be constituted into the independent sovereign India shall be a union of them all, and wherein the said territories, whether with their present boundaries or with such others as may be determined by the Constituent Assembly and thereafter according to the law of the Constitution, shall possess and retain the status of autonomous units together with residuary powers and exercise all powers and functions of government and administration save and except such powers and functions as are vested in or assigned to the union or as are inherent or implied in the union or resulting therefrom, and wherein all the power and authority of the sovereign independent India, its constituent parts and organs of government are derived from the people, and wherein shall be guaranteed and secured to all the people of India justice, social, economic, and political equality of status, of opportunity, and before the law, freedom of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship, vocation, association, and action, subject to law and public morality, and wherein adequate safeguards shall be provided for minorities, backward and tribal areas, and depressed and other backward classes, and whereby shall be maintained the integrity of the territory of the Republic and its sovereign rights on land, sea, and air, according to justice and the law of civilized nations. And this ancient land attains its rightful and honored place in the world and makes its full and willing contribution to the promotion of world peace and the welfare of mankind. So this was the objectives resolution, which I felt was quite based on the terms, the terminologies, and the way of expressing was a bit complicated. So इसको दोबारा से रीड करना होगा या फिर सुनना होगा. This resolution was unanimously adopted by the Assembly on January 22nd, 1947. It influenced the eventual shaping of the Constitution through all its subsequent stages. Its modified version forms the preamble of the present Constitution. Now, changes by the Independence Act. The representatives of the princely states who had stayed away from the Constituent Assembly gradually joined it. On April 28, 1947, representatives of the 6 states, and those 6 states were, let me check in the reference. For the first time, the Constituent Assembly met as Dominion Legislature on November 17, 1947 and elected G.V. Mavalankar as its Speaker. This was another one. Those 6 states included Baroda, Bikaner, Jaipur, Patiala, Rewa, and Udaipur. So, these were the 6 states after the acceptance of Mountbatten Plan on June 3, 1947. For a partition of the country, the representatives of most of the other princely states took their seats in the assembly. The members of the Muslim League from the Indian Dominion also entered the assembly. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 made the following three changes in the position of the assembly. Let's read those three changes. The assembly was made a fully sovereign body which could frame any constitution it pleased. The act empowered the assembly to abrogate or alter any law made by British Parliament in relation to India. The first change. Second was, the assembly also became a legislative body. In other words, two separate functions were assigned to the assembly, that is, making of the constitution for free India and enacting of ordinary laws for the country. These two tasks were to be performed on separate days. Thus, the assembly became the first parliament of free India, Dominion legislature. Whenever the assembly met as the constituent body, it was chaired by Dr. Rajendra Prasad, and when it met as the legislative body, it was chaired by G.V. Mavalankar. These two functions continued till November 26, 1949, when the task of making constitution was over. And the third change, the Muslim League members hailing from the areas included in the Pakistan, and those areas are West Punjab, East Bengal, NWFP, Sindh, Balochistan and Sylhet district of Assam. A separate constituent assembly was set up for Pakistan, which was obvious. So the Muslim League members hailing from those areas included in Pakistan withdrew from the Constituent Assembly for India. Consequently, the total strength of the assembly came down to 299 as against 389, originally fixed in 1946 under the Cabinet Mission Plan. The strength of the Indian provinces, formerly British provinces, was reduced from 296 to 229, and those of princely states from 93 to 70. The state-wise membership of the assembly as on December 31st, 1947 is shown in the table 2.4 at the end of this chapter. Other functions performed. In addition to the making of the constitution and enacting of ordinary laws, the Constituent Assembly also performed the following functions. It ratified the India's membership of the Commonwealth in May 1949. It adopted the national flag on July 22, 1947. It adopted the national anthem on January 24, 1950. It adopted the national song on January 24, 1950. It elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad as the first President of India on January 24, 1950. In all, Constituent Assembly had 11 sessions over 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. The constitution makers had gone through the constitutions of about 60 countries, and the draft constitution was considered for 114 days. The total expenditure incurred on making the constitution amounted to 64 lakh rupees. On January 24th, 1950, the Constituent Assembly held its final session. It, however, did not end and continued as a provisional Parliament of India from January 26, 1950 till the formation of new Parliament after the first general elections in 1951 to 52. The provisional Parliament ceased to exist on April 17, 1952. The first elected Parliament with the two houses came into being in May 1952. Committees of the Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly appointed a number of committees to deal with different tasks of constitution making. Out of these, 8 were major committees and the others were minor committees. The names of these committees and their chairmen are given below. So the 8 major committees are the Union Powers Committee. It was chaired by Jawaharlal Nehru. Union Constitution Committee, chaired by Jawaharlal Nehru. Provincial Constitution Committee, Sardar Patel. Drafting Committee, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights, Minorities and Tribal and Excluded Areas, Sardar Patel. This committee, the Advisory Committee on Fundamental Rights, had the following 5 subcommittees. Fundamental Rights Subcommittee, headed by J.B. Kripalani. Minorities Subcommittee by H.C. Mukherjee. Northeast Frontier Tribal Areas and Assam Excluded and Partially Excluded Areas Subcommittee, Gopinath Bardoloi. Excluded and partially excluded areas other than those in Assam by subcommittee by A.V. Thakkar. And the last one is the 5th one, Northwest Frontier Tribal Areas Subcommittee. Rules of Procedure Committee by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. States Committee, Committee for Negotiating with States, Jawaharlal Nehru. Steering Committee, Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Now the minor committees are, there are 13 in numbers. The first one is Finance and Staff Committee, chaired by Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Credentials Committee, Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer. House Committee, B. Pattabhi Sita Ramaiya. Sorry for the pronunciation. I'm trying to be as accurate, as good as I can. Order of Business Committee, Dr. K. M. Munshi. Ad hoc Committee on the National Flag, Dr. Rajendra Prasad. Committee on Functions of the Constituent Assembly, J.V. Mavalankar. Ad hoc Committee on Supreme Court, S. Varadachari, not an assembly member. Committee on Chief Commissioners, Provinces by B. Pattabhi Sitaramaiya. Expert Committee on Financial Provisions of the Union Constitution, Nalini Ranjan Sarkar, not an assembly member. Linguistic Provinces Commission by S.K. Dhar, not an assembly member. Special Committee on examine the draft Special Committee to examine the draft Constitution, Jawaharlal Nehru. Press Gallery Committee, Usha Nath Sen. Ad hoc Committee on Citizenship, S. Varadachari. Now the Drafting Committee. Among all the committees of the Constituent Assembly, the most important committee was Drafting Committee, set up on August 29, 1947. It was this committee that was entrusted with the task of preparing a draft of the new constitution. It consisted of 7 members. They were Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman, N. Gopalaswamy Ayyannagar, Alladi Krishnaswamy Iyer, Dr. K.M. Munshi, Syed Muhammad Sadullah, N. Madhava Rao. He replaced B.L. Mittar, who resigned due to ill health. 7th is T.T. Krishnamachari. He replaced D.P. Khaitan, who died in 1948. The drafting committee, after taking into consideration the proposals of the various committees, prepared the first draft of the Constitution of India, which was published in February 1948. The people of India were given 8 months to discuss the draft and propose amendments. In the light of the public comments, criticisms, and suggestions, the drafting committee prepared a second draft, which was published in October 1948. The drafting committee took less than 6 months to prepare its draft, and all it sat only for 141 days. And after that, enactment of the Constitution. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar introduced the final draft of the Constitution in the Assembly on November 4th, 1948, the first reading. The Assembly had a general discussion on it for 5 days till November 9th, 1948. The second reading, clause by clause consideration, started on November 15th, 1948 and ended on October 17th, 1949. During this stage, as many as 7653 amendments were proposed and 2473 were actually discussed in the Assembly. 7653 amendments were proposed and 2473 were actually discussed in the Assembly. The third reading of the draft started on November 14th, 1949. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar moved a motion, the Constitution as settled by the Assembly be passed. The motion on draft Constitution was declared as passed on November 26, 1949 and received the signatures of the members of the President. Out of a total of 299 members of the Assembly, only 284 were actually present on that day and signed the Constitution. This is also the date mentioned in the preamble as the date on which the people of India and Constituent Assembly adopted, enacted and gave to themselves this Constitution. The Constitution as adopted on November 26, 1949 contained a preamble, 395 articles and 8 schedules. The preamble was enacted after the entire Constitution was already enacted. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the then Law Minister, piloted the draft commission in the Assembly. He took a very prominent part of the deliberations of the Assembly. He was known for his logical, forceful, and persuasive arguments on the floor of the Assembly. He is recognized as the father of Constitution of India. This brilliant writer, constitutional expert, undisputed leader of the scheduled castes, and the chief architect of the Constitution of India is also known as Modern Manu. Enforcement of the Constitution. Some provisions of the Constitution pertaining to citizenship, elections, provisional parliament, temporary and transitional provisions, and short title contained in Articles 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 60, 324, 366, 367, 379, 380, 388, 391, 392 and 393 came into force on November 26, 1949 itself. The remaining provisions, the major part of the Constitution, came into force on January 26, 1950. This day is referred to in the Constitution as the date of its commencement and celebrated as Republic Day. January 26 was specifically chosen as the date of commencement of the Constitution because of its historical importance. It was on this day in 1930 that Purna Swaraj Day was celebrated, following the resolution of the Lahore session, December 1929, of the INC. With the commencement of Constitution, the Indian Independence Act of 1947 and the Government of India Act of 1935, with all enactments amending or supplementing the latter act, were repealed. The abolition of Privy Council Jurisdictions Act 1949 was, however, continued. Now, the criticism of the Constituent Assembly. The critics have criticized the Constituent Assembly on various grounds. These are as follows. First criticism was not a representative body. The critics have argued that the Constituent Assembly was not a representative body as its members were not directly elected by the people of India on the basis of universal adult franchise. Second criticism, not a sovereign body. The critics maintained that the Constituent Assembly was not a sovereign body as it was created by the proposals of the British government. Further, they said that the Assembly held its sessions with the permission of the British government. Third criticism, time consuming. According to the critics, the Constituent Assembly took unduly long time to make the Constitution. They stated that the framers of the American Constitution took only 4 months to complete their work. In this context, Naziruddin Ahmad, a member of the Constituent Assembly, coined a new name for the drafting committee to show his contempt for it. He called it as Drafting Committee. Fourth criticism, dominated by Congress. The critics charged that the Constituent Assembly was dominated by the Congress Party. Granville Austin, a British constitutional expert, remarked, the Constituent Assembly was a one-party body in an essentially one-party country. The Assembly was the Congress and the Congress was India, which was almost true. Fifth criticism, lawyer-politician domination. It is also maintained by the critics that the Constituent Assembly was dominated by lawyers and politicians. They pointed out that other sections of the society were not sufficiently represented. This, to them, is the main reason for the bulkiness and complicated language of the Constitution. Now, the sixth criticism, dominated by Hindus. According to some critics, the Constituent Assembly was a Hindu-dominated body. Lord Viscount Simon called it a body of Hindus. Similarly, Winston Churchill commented that the Constituent Assembly represented only one major community in India. Now, some important facts. Elephant was adopted as a seal of the Constituent Assembly. Sir B.N. Rao was appointed as the constitutional advisor, legal advisor to the Constituent Assembly. H.V.R. Iyengar was the secretary to the Constituent Assembly. S.N. Mukherjee was the chief draftsman of the Constitution in the making of in the Constituent Assembly. Prem Bihari Narayan Raizada was the calligrapher of the Indian Constitution. Prem Bihari Narayan Raizada. The original constitution was handwritten by him in a flowing italic style. You can imagine such a huge compilation was handwritten. And who wrote it? Prem Bihari Narayan Raizada. The original version was beautiful and decorated by artists from Shantiniketan, including Nandlal Bose and Biohar Ram Manohar Sinha. Biohar Ram Manohar Sinha illuminated, beautified, and ornamented the original preamble calligraphed by Prem Bihari Narayan Raizada. The calligraphy of Hindi version of the original constitution was done by Vasant Krishna Vaidya and elegantly decorated and illuminated by Nandlal Bose. Now in this chapter there are several tables. So table 2.1 is this: allocation of seats in the Constituent Assembly of India 1946, and table 2.2 is results of the elections to the Constituent Assembly July to August 1946. Congress got 208 seats and Muslim got 73 seats. Now table 2.3, community-wise representation in the Constituent Assembly. So Hindus got 163 seats, Muslims got 80 seats, scheduled castes got 31, Indian Christians got 6, backward tribes got 6, Sikhs got 4, Anglo-Indians got 3, Parsis got 3. Now the table 2.4. This table is showing state-wise membership of the Constituent Assembly of India as on December 31st, 1947. और इसमें बहुत सारे प्रोविंसेस, इंडियन प्रोविंसेस के नाम है और लिस्ट है इंडियन स्टेट्स जो प्रिंसली स्टेट्स थे. तो ये बहुत सारे स्टेट्स के नाम हैं जिनको आप आराम से पढ़ सकते हैं और उनके नंबर ऑफ मेंबर्स भी देख सकते हैं. And this is the last table, table 2.5, which shows sessions of the Constituent Assembly at a glance, till when and on which date was sessions kept. And below it there is a note. The Assembly met once again on 24 January 1950 when the members appended with their signatures to the Constitution of India. So in this way we have completed chapter 2. Yay! Congratulations to ourselves. Thank you.